It was supposed to be a simple drive home. I'd spent the weekend at my buddy's cabin near Pine Ridge, just fishing, drinking cheap beer, and pretending I wasn't drowning in credit card debt. The trip back was quiet, just empty back roads cutting through miles of forest. No streetlights, no gas stations, just my headlights fighting against the dark. Then, around 9 p.m., my piece of crap Honda sputtered like it was choking. The engine died completely, leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere. No cell service, not even a damn bar to try a call. I smacked the steering wheel, swearing under my breath. The woods around me felt too still, like the trees were holding their breath. I waited for maybe 20 minutes, hoping another car would pass, but nothing. The air got colder and I started weighing my options. Sleep in the car and freeze, or walk until I found help. That's when I saw it. A dim yellow glow through the trees. A house. Not a modern one either. This thing looked straight out of a horror movie. Sagging porch, peeling paint, a single flickering bulb above the door. My gut screamed, "Don't go in there." But what choice did I have? I knocked, and the door creaked open almost immediately. An old woman stood there, her smile too wide. "You must be freezing," she said, like she'd been expecting me. Her voice had this weird, sing-song quality, like a nursery rhyme. I should have run, but she stepped aside, and like an idiot, I walked in. The inside of the house smelled like mothballs and something sweet underneath. Rotten fruit, maybe. The walls were covered in old photographs, but when I glanced at them, none of the faces were clear, just blurred smudges where eyes and mouths should have been. The woman, she called herself Marlene, led me to the kitchen and insisted on making me tea. Her hands shook as she poured, but she didn't spill a drop. That's when she said it. "You liked the lake by the cabin, didn't you?" My stomach dropped. I had gone fishing at a lake, but I never mentioned it. Before I could ask how she knew, she tilted her head and added, "The water was cold this weekend. You shouldn't have gone so deep." My skin prickled. I'd almost slipped off a rock while waiting, a private moment, no one around to see. Dinner was worse. She served stew that tasted like salt and pennies with chunks of meat I couldn't identify. The whole time, her eyes never left me. She asked about my job, my ex. "Claire still misses you, you know." How the hell? Even my childhood dog by name. Every answer I didn't give, she filled in herself. The clock on the wall ticked too loud, like a hammer on bone. I excused myself to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. But when I looked up, the mirror was gone. Just a blank space where it should have been. That's when I heard it. A faint scraping from above me. Slow, deliberate, like something being dragged across the attic floor. I rushed out of the bathroom, my pulse hammering in my throat. The hallway stretched, longer than before. Doors I didn't remember now lining the walls. One stood slightly ajar. A bedroom, where Marlene had said I'd sleep. The sheets looked freshly pressed, but there were stains on the pillowcase, rust-colored and faint. I sat on the edge of the bed listening. The scraping had stopped, replaced by something worse. A whisper, so soft I almost missed it. My name, not just spoken, but drawn out, like someone savoring it. I grabbed my phone. 10:17 p.m. I could have sworn it was past midnight. The air felt thick, like the house was holding its breath. Then a creak from above. Something heavy shifted in the attic. Paragraph 6. I bolted upright. No way in hell was I staying. I threw open the bedroom door and froze. The living room was different. The couch was now a high-backed Victorian thing, clawed feet digging into the carpet. The walls, once floral wallpaper, were painted a sickly green. Even the windows were wrong. Smaller, higher, like they'd been moved. My breath came in, short gasps. This isn't possible. I turned back to the bedroom, but the door was gone. Just smooth wall where it had been. From the kitchen, Marlene called, "You'll catch cold without your jacket." Her voice was closer now, syrup sweet. The attic door rattled just once, like something testing the lock. I ran for the front door, my socks slipping on hardwood that hadn't been there before. The knob wouldn't turn. Marlene's shadow stretched down the hallway, long and thin, her silhouette swaying, like she was dancing. "Leaving so soon?" she crooned. The attic door burst open with a splintering crack. I didn't look. I threw myself at the window, shoulder first. Glass shattered, cold air hit my face, and then I was outside, sprinting through the trees. Branches lashed my arms, but I didn't stop until I saw my car. It sat exactly where I'd left it. Engine silent, but headlights blazing like it had never broken down. Paragraph 8. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking too hard to fit them in the ignition. When I finally risked a glance back, the house was gone. Just an empty clearing, moonlight pooling where the porch should have been. The engine roared to life like nothing had ever been wrong. I peeled onto the road, my rearview mirror showing only darkness. But as I hit the highway, my phone buzzed. A single text from an unknown number. "You forgot your tea." Attached was a photo of the kitchen table, steam still curling from the cup. And in the background, barely visible, a figure standing in the attic doorway, watching. Paragraph 9. I drove like hell, my knuckles white on the wheel. The road unspooled too perfectly, no potholes, no bends, just a straight black line cutting through the woods. My GPS showed no signal, but the clock on the dashboard flickered. 3:07 a.m. That couldn't be right. I'd left the house at maybe 11. My skin crawled. I rolled down the window, needing air, but the wind smelled wrong, like wet earth and that same sweet rot from Marlene's house. That's when I noticed the fence posts along the road. They were carved with symbols, shallow grooves forming eyes, mouths twisted in silent screams. I'd swear they hadn't been there before. Paragraph 10. The gas light flicked on. No, I'd filled up before the trip. I pulled over, heart jackhammering, and checked my phone. Still no service, but the photo Marlene sent was gone. In its place, a voicemail notification. I played it. Static first, then breathing, then my own voice, whispering, "Turn around. You left something behind." The recording cut off with a wet crunch like teeth closing. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. Ahead, a neon sign buzzed to life. Last Chance Diner, 1 mile. I hadn't seen it on the drive up, but with the tank near empty, I had no choice. Paragraph 11. The diner was straight out of the 1950s. Chrome stools, checkered floors, a jukebox playing nothing but static. The lone waitress didn't look up as I entered. "Sit anywhere," she droned. Her name tag read, Marlene. IQ froze. Same voice, same too wide smile, but this woman was younger, her hair dark instead of gray. She slid a cup of coffee toward me. It was cold, with a film of grease on top. "Long night?" she asked. Behind her, the kitchen door swung open. For a second, I saw the attic. Same sloped ceiling, same rusted hooks dangling from beams. The door slammed shut. The waitress leaned in. "You really shouldn't drive tired," she said. Her breath smelled like the stew. Paragraph 12. I ran again. Didn't pay. Didn't look back. My car started on the first try. Gas gauge now magically full. The diner vanished in my rear view, swallowed by the trees. Dawn finally broke as I hit the interstate. The real world bleeding back in. Billboards, truck stops. My phone chirping with missed calls. When I got home, I tore the house apart, checking mirrors, closets, the attic. Nothing. But that night, I woke to the smell of mothballs. My bedroom door stood open. Down the hall, the kitchen light was on, and from the shadows, a familiar voice trilled, "You didn't finish your tea?" The last thing I saw before I slammed the door and shoved a dresser against it was the wallpaper. Floral, just like hers. I just moved into my new apartment in downtown Chicago, one of those old brick buildings with creaky floors and too thin walls, but it was mine. I was 26, working late nights at a marketing firm, and too exhausted most days to even notice the weird hum from the elevator or the way the hallway lights flickered. That Thursday, I dragged myself home around 9 p.m., takeout bag in hand, and almost tripped over it. A bulky cardboard box, taped shut, no labels. Just my name, Jessica, scrawled in shaky, black marker. No return address, no shipping info. I figured it was a misdelivered Amazon order, maybe a weird corporate gift from work. The second I lifted it, though, my stomach dropped. It was heavy, like it was packed with rocks, and cold. Not freezer cold, but the kind of chill that clings to your fingers even after you let go. Inside my apartment, I sliced the tape open with a kitchen knife, half expecting a prank or some viral marketing crap. Instead, I recoiled so hard I knocked over my coffee table. The box was stuffed with photos, dozens of them, curled at the edges like they'd been handled too much. My photos. Me leaving my gym at 6 a.m., my hair still wet from the shower. Me laughing with coworkers at a bar I'd only been to once. Me asleep on the L train, head against the window, mouth slightly open. The worst one? A close-up of me in my own bedroom, taken through the window. My face lit blue by the TV. My hands shook so bad I dropped it. That's when I saw the note, tucked under a rubber band. I'm waiting for you. The handwriting matched the box. And then, I swear this wasn't paranoia, the hallway floor creaked, like someone had been standing right outside my door and just stepped away. I didn't sleep that night. Every rustle of the wind against the fire escape sounded like fingers tapping glass. I spread the photos across my floor, trying to find a pattern, a clue, anything. Some were clearly taken from a distance with a zoom lens, but others were close. Too close. Like the one of me buying groceries, my fingers gripping a carton of eggs, the angle suggesting the photographer had been right beside me. My breath hitched when I noticed a detail. In every shot, just barely in frame, a shadow. Not quite a person, but a darkness that didn't match the lighting, always slightly out of focus. The next morning, I called the police, but the officer on the phone sighed like I'd interrupted his lunch. "You got any enemies, miss?" As if I'd know. As if they would warn me. Work was a blur. I kept catching movement in my periphery. A flicker near the office windows. A silhouette in the elevator mirror that vanished when I turned. By noon, I was snapping photos of every crowded street, every empty hallway, zooming in frantically to check for that same distorted shadow. Nothing. Until my phone buzzed with a notification. One new memory. It was an automated album from my cloud storage, titled Recent, but I hadn't made it. Inside were 3 new pictures. Me, standing in my bathroom that morning brushing my teeth. Me, locking my apartment door. And one more, taken seconds ago through my office's glass partition. My face pale with terror as I stared at my phone. The timestamp read, now. I spun around, but the hallway behind me was empty, except for the faint smell of cigarettes, and I don't smoke. The next few days were a nightmare of locked doors and jump scares. I started noticing things. Small, deliberate things. My shower would be slightly hotter than I'd left it, like someone had tested the water before me. My coffee tasted bitter once, as if something had been stirred in while I wasn't looking. And the smell, that damn cigarette smoke clinging to my curtains, my coat, even my hair. I bought security cameras, but the footage glitched whenever something moved in the dark. Just static, then a split-second glimpse of a figure too tall, too thin, standing perfectly still in the corner of my living room. Not a shadow anymore. Him. I could see the shape of a hat, the curve of a coat collar, always facing away from the camera. But in the photos, he was always facing me. Then came the noises. A knock at 3 a.m. Not my door, but the wall behind my bed, like someone was in the empty apartment next door. I pressed my ear to the plaster and heard breathing. Wet, ragged. I screamed, and it stopped. The super swore the adjoining unit had been vacant for months, but when he opened it, the air smelled like menthols and something sour, and on the dusty floor, fresh footprints led to the wall we shared. That's when I found the hole. Tiny, hidden behind a loose baseboard near my nightstand. I vomited right there. He'd been watching me sleep. For how long? The police finally took a report, but their eyes glazed over when I mentioned the photos. "You sure you didn't take these yourself, miss?" One cop muttered about sleepwalking and stress. But stress doesn't leave handprints on your windowsill. Stress doesn't whisper your name in a voice that isn't there. I started carrying a knife. Not a kitchen one. A real, sharp hunting blade I bought at a pawn shop after lying through my teeth about camping trips. Every time I walked home, I clutched it in my pocket, finger resting on the release button. I took different routes, ducked into crowded stores, doubled back on my steps. But no matter what I did, I'd catch glimpses of him. A tall figure, in a long coat lingering near the bus stop. A silhouette in the alley. Across from my building, standing motionless under a flickering streetlight. Once I swear I saw him inside a diner, sitting at the counter with his back to me, shoulders too angular, posture all wrong. When I blinked, the stool was empty, but the coffee cup in front of it was still steaming. The breaking point came when I found the first new package. Not at my door this time, but on my couch. Inside my locked apartment. I hadn't even left that day. Called in sick, barricaded myself in with chairs, under the doorknobs, but there it was. A small wrapped box with a bow on top, like some sick birthday gift. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a single Polaroid, still developing as I held it. The image swam into focus slowly. Me, right at that moment, kneeling on my living room floor in my ratty sweatpants, eyes wide with terror. The camera had been in the room with me, and written beneath the photo, in that same jagged handwriting, "You're not looking hard enough." That's when I heard the closet door creak open behind me. I didn't turn around, my body locked up, muscles screaming at me to run, but my brain short-circuited. If I don't look, it can't be real. The closet door groaned wider, hinges protesting like they hadn't been touched in years. A cold draft slithered out, carrying that same stale cigarette stench mixed with something metallic. Blood. My imagination painted the rest. Long fingers curling around the door frame, a face leaning into the light. I squeezed my eyes shut. This isn't happening. Then, click, the sound of a camera shutter. My eyes flew open. On the floor in front of me, a fresh Polaroid slid out from under the closet door, still developing. I didn't need to see it to know what it would show. Me, right now, back turned to whatever stood behind me. The knife trembled in my hand. I finally spun around, blade raised, ready to scream or stab or both. The closet was empty, just my coat swaying slightly, like someone had brushed past them. But the Polaroid, that was real. And so was the voice. Not a whisper, not my imagination. A man's voice, raspy and low, humming a tune I recognized. "You are my sunshine." It came from inside the closet, then the bedroom, then the bathroom, circling me, laughing. I bolted for the door, but the deadbolt was jammed. The chain lock swung gently like someone had just tested it. Outside the window, streetlights flickered off one by one down the block, plunging the street into darkness. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, a text. "Let's play a game. Close your eyes. Count to 10. I didn't close my eyes. I didn't fucking move. The air in the apartment thickened, pressing against my skin like wet cloth. Then, knock. 3 slow raps on the front door. Not aggressive, polite almost, like a neighbor asking for sugar. My throat locked. The knife handle was slick in my grip. Another text lit up my phone. "You're cheating." The closet door slammed shut behind me. I whirled around just as the bedroom light blew out with a pop, glass raining onto the carpet. Shadows pooled in the doorway, stretching too long, too wrong. A shape detached itself from the dark. Tall, that coat collar turned up, face still hidden, but I felt it smile. "Who are you?" I screamed, voice cracking. It tilted its head. Then, in a voice that wasn't a voice but the scrape of nails on brick, it answered, "You let me in. The package. The first one." I'd carried it inside myself. I lunged, not at it, but for the window. Fire escape. The glass shattered under my elbow, pain flaring hot up my arm. Cold air rushed in as I hauled myself through, shards biting into my palms. I didn't look back. Below, the alley was pitch black, but I jumped anyway, rolling hard onto concrete. My ankles screamed. So did the thing in my apartment. Not human, not even close. It hit the window frame behind me with a wet crunch, bones bending the way bones shouldn't. I ran limping toward the neon glow of the bodega on the corner, sobbing, snot running down my face. Cops came. Landlord came. Apartment was empty. No photos. No boxes. Just my shattered window and a single Polaroid stuck to the fridge with a magnet I didn't own. The image? My empty living room. And in the corner, barely visible, a shadow, now facing forward. I still remember my first day at that job. The kind of small family-run business where everyone acts like they've known each other for decades. The office was quiet, almost too quiet, with this weird tension in the air like no one wanted to speak too loudly. At first I thought it was just new job jitters, but looking back I should have trusted my gut. The team was small, just 5 of us, and most of them were friendly enough. Except for him. Let's call him Mark. Mark had been there for years, the kind of guy who knew everything about the company but never seemed to actually do much. He'd just sit at his desk staring at his computer, but I'd catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't outright creepy at first, just off. The comments started small. "That's a nice sweater. Blue really suits you." Harmless, right? But then it got weirder. He'd mentioned things he shouldn't have known, like how I always took my coffee with 2 sugars, or that I'd been late the day before, because of traffic on Main Street. I laughed it off at first, chalking it up to him being observant. But then I saw him outside work, just glimpses at first, across the street from my usual lunch spot, lingering near the bus stop I used. Each time, he'd act like it was a coincidence, smiling like we were just 2 co-workers who happened to run into each other. But the way his eyes locked onto me, it made my skin crawl. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he just lived nearby. Maybe he liked the same coffee shop. But then I saw him outside my gym, leaning against his car like he was waiting for someone. That's when the pit in my stomach turned into full-blown dread. I ducked behind a group of people walking in, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The next day at work, I casually asked if he worked out at FitLife too. He just smirked and said, "I don't like gyms, too many mirrors." The way he said it, like it was a joke only he understood, made my blood run cold. That night, I started taking different routes home. Then came the photo. I was grabbing a file from Mark's desk while he was out, just routine stuff, and that's when I saw it. Tucked under a stack of papers, half hidden, a picture of me. It was taken outside my apartment building from across the street. I was carrying groceries wearing that bright red coat I'd bought months ago. My hands shook so bad I almost dropped it. The worst part? It wasn't just that one photo. Behind it were others. Me at the park, me getting into my car, even one through the window of my favorite diner. All candid, all taken without me ever noticing. I shoved them back like they'd burned me and spent the rest of the day fighting the urge to vomit. The next few days were a blur of paranoia. I started noticing little things. My desk drawer slightly open when I knew I'd closed it. The smell of his cologne lingering near my chair after lunch. One morning, I found my coffee mug moved to the other side of my keyboard. Small things, but enough to make me question my sanity. I began documenting everything. Dates, times, the places I'd seen him. I even started taking photos of his car parked in weird places, just to prove to myself I wasn't imagining it. But what really messed me up was when I found my own address scribbled on a sticky note in his handwriting, tucked in a company folder he'd left on the printer. I finally confronted him. It wasn't some dramatic scene, just me pulling him aside in the break room, voice low so no one would hear. "Why do you have pictures of me?" I asked point blank. He didn't even flinch, just tilted his head like I'd asked about the weather. "What pictures?" he said, all fake confusion. When I pressed him, his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You must be mistaken. Maybe you're stressed?" The gaslighting was so smooth it made me dizzy. That night, I checked my apartment door's deadbolt 3 times before bed. I barely slept, jumping at every creak in the building, wondering if he was out. There right now, watching my windows like he'd watched everything else. Things escalated after that. I'd wake up to missed calls from blocked numbers. My social media accounts got follow requests from blank profiles. One morning, I found a single blue rose, my favorite color, on my windshield with no note. I started carrying pepper spray in my purse and kept a baseball bat by my bed. The worst part? Nobody at work noticed anything wrong. To them, Mark was just the quiet guy who brought donuts on Fridays. When I tried hinting to my boss that something was off, she patted my shoulder and said, "Oh, that's just how he is." Like I was overreacting. Like I was the problem. The breaking point came when I found my trash cans knocked over one morning. Not just tipped, but arranged. My torn-up receipts were stacked neatly beside them, and my used coffee filters were lined up in a row. That's when I knew. He'd been inside my trash. He'd touched my things. I sat on my kitchen floor sobbing, realizing how deep this went. That same day at work, Mark accidentally brushed against me in the hallway and whispered, "Rough night?" His breath smelled like the mint gum I kept in my desk drawer, the gum that had been missing since yesterday. I quit the next day. No notice, just walked in, cleared my desk, and left while Mark was in a meeting. My hands shook the whole time, but I forced myself not to cry until I was in my car. I changed my phone number, moved across town, and got a YOW restraining order. Not that it would stop someone like him. For months, I checked over my shoulder everywhere I went. I still do sometimes. The police said without concrete proof, there was nothing they could do. All those photos? Gone from his desk when they checked. My word against his. Here's what haunts me most. About a year later, An old coworker messaged me, said Mark had been fired after another new hire complained about uncomfortable behavior. The coworker included a screenshot of the girl's resignation email. One line jumped out. He knew things about me he shouldn't have known. Same pattern, same exact words I'd used. I threw up reading it. He'd just moved on to someone else like I'd been some temporary obsession. To this day, I don't know how much he really knew about me, or how close he ever got. And that's the part that keeps me up at night, not knowing if it's really over, or if he's just waiting for me to feel safe again. Sometimes I wonder if I should have fought harder, gone to the media, sued the company for ignoring it. But in the end, all I wanted was to disappear from his radar. I changed everything. My routines, my hair color, even the way I dressed. For a while, I'd see a car that looked like his, and my body would freeze up like it was happening all over again. The fear doesn't go away. You just learn to live with it like a scar. The last I heard, Mark still works in the same industry. His LinkedIn shows him smiling in a new office, surrounded by co-workers, normal, unassuming. That's the scariest part. People like him don't look like monsters. They look like your neighbor, your co-worker, the guy who holds the elevator door. They blend in, and by the time you realize what they are, they already know everything about you.